Intelligence grilled today, asked why he held on to the whistleblower's complaint, why he went to the White House first and not Congress. He acknowledged the whistleblower did the right thing. And tonight, what the whistleblower's complaint, now public, reveals. He says White House officials were alarmed by that phone call with the Ukrainian president, and that some allegedly tried to lock down the transcript on a separate computer system to keep it from view. Meanwhile, as this was playing out today, President Trump behind closed doors here in New York City, and a recording now surfacing of what he said. Furious and unloading, comparing the whistleblower and White House sources to spies, and telling people in the room, you know what we used to do with spies and treason. Some in the room shocked. The first major snowstorm set to hit, the winter storm warning tonight, several feet of snow. Rob Marciano with the track. The stunning new numbers just in from the CDC, the number of vaping-related deaths and illnesses soaring. At least 12 patients now dead, more than 800 illnesses across 46 states. Bullying in America, the 13-year-old attacked in middle school, dying a week later. Parents and administrators face to face. The deadly Army medevac crash here in the U.S. And the baggage handler under arrest tonight at a major airport, accused of stealing hundreds of thousands in cash.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night. And we begin with the whistleblower's complaint at the center of the storm in Washington, the center of this new impeachment inquiry involving President Trump. That complaint now made public tonight, and what it alleges, saying some White House officials tried to cover up the call with the president of Ukraine, trying to conceal the transcript of the call on a separate, highly secure computer system. And today, the acting director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire, was in the hot seat, asked why he held on to that complaint for so long, why he went to the White House before Congress. He defended his decision today, but he also acknowledged something else. He said the whistleblower did the right thing. And he acknowledged that when he learned of that phone call between President Trump and the new president of Ukraine, he knew this would escalate. So was there a cover-up in the White House? And what President Trump said just today, a recording now emerging of a closed-door meeting earlier today, comparing some of the White House and that whistleblower to spies. ABC's Mary Bruce leads us off from the Hill tonight.
Today on Capitol Hill, the acting director of national intelligence grilled. He was the one who kept the whistleblower's report under wraps for weeks, going first to the White House instead of Congress. Today, he defended that decision. But when pressed, he also defended the whistleblower.
I think the whistleblower did the right thing. I think he followed the law every step of the way.
You don't have any reason to accuse them of disloyalty to our country or suggest they're beholden to some other country, do you?
Sir, absolutely not.
The whistleblower claims multiple U.S. government officials informed him that the President of the United States is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election. The whistleblower goes on to describe the president's phone call with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Just yesterday, the White House released the transcript of that call, and it showed President Trump asked the Ukrainian president to do us a favor, and later urged him to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden. Pressed today, the acting director acknowledged the whistleblower's account did in fact match that transcript.
Would you say that the whistleblower's complaint is remarkably consistent with the transcript that was released?
I would say that the whistleblower's complaint is in alignment with what was released yesterday by the president.
The whistleblower goes on to say that some White House officials were deeply disturbed by the phone call and the likelihood that they had witnessed the president abuse his office for personal gain. And the whistleblower alleges senior White House officials tried to cover it up. He writes that senior White House officials had intervened to, quote, lock down all records of the phone call, especially the word-for-word transcript. Adding, officials said they were, quote, directed by White House lawyers to remove the electronic transcript from the computer system in which such transcripts are typically stored, and put it into a separate electronic system that is otherwise used to store and handle classified information. The whistleblower says one official characterized this as an abuse of the system and that other Trump transcripts had been hidden before. The whistleblower's complaint was submitted to the intelligence community's inspector general, who then determined it was credible and of urgent concern. But the acting director refused to forward the complaint to Congress, instead acknowledging today he called the White House first, even though the complaint was about the president.
So you went to the White House first. So you went to the subject of the complaint for advice first about whether you should provide the complaint to Congress.
There were issues within this, a couple of things. One, it did appear that it has executive privilege. If it does have executive privilege, it is the White House that determines that. I cannot determine that as the Director of National Intelligence.
But in this case, the White House, the president is the subject of the complaint.
But many Republicans were not having it.
I want to congratulate the Democrats on the rollout of their latest information warfare operation against the president.
But while blasting the Democrats, there was little defense of how the president handled that call. One Republican with this stark message.
Concerning that conversation, I want to say to the president, this is not okay. It is that conversation is not okay, and I think it's disappointing to the American public when they read the transcript.
And he's not alone. A growing number of Republicans are voicing concerns. After first reading the complaint, Republican Senator Ben Sasse with a warning for his own party.
Republicans ought not to be rushing to circle the wagons and say there's no there when there's obviously lots that's very troubling there.
So let's get to Mary Bruce. She's live up on the Hill where she has been all day. And Mary, the acting director of National Intelligence, was also asked whether he discussed the whistleblower's complaint with the president. And he also acknowledged today he doesn't even know who the whistleblower is.
David, even he says he does not know who this whistleblower is. And when pressed repeatedly, he refused to say whether he's discussed this matter at all with the president, saying those conversations are privileged. But David, tonight members of Congress say they expect to speak with that whistleblower sometime soon. David.
Mary Bruce leading us off tonight. Mary, thank you. And at the same time, the acting director of National Intelligence was testifying there on the Hill. President Trump was in a closed-door meeting with staff here in New York City, and he was unleashing. The recording now emerging from the event with staff from the U.S. mission to the UN. The president compared White House officials who allegedly talked to the whistleblower to spies. And then he said something else that reportedly shocked some in the room about what used to happen to spies. ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran at the White House.
As his acting director of national intelligence testified on Capitol Hill this morning, behind closed doors, President Trump was venting to the staff at the U.S. mission to the UN. In an audio recording obtained by the Los Angeles Times, you can hear his frustration building at the whistleblower.
Basically, that person never saw the report, never saw the call.
Then, talking about the whistleblower's sources in the White House, his thoughts turned violent.
I want to know who's the person that gave the whistleblower, who's the person that gave the whistleblower the information? Because that's close to a spy. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? The spies and treason. We used to handle it a little differently than we do now.
In the old days, spies and traitors were put to death. Later, returning to Washington, Trump talked again about today's hearing, deploying a familiar phrase.
I just watched a little bit of this on television. It's a disgrace to our country. It's another witch hunt. Here we go again.
But then this, a wish and maybe a strategy to derail the whole impeachment inquiry.
There should be a way of stopping it, maybe legally through the courts, but they're going to tie up our country.
Terry Moran live at the White House again tonight. And Terry, you heard the president there making that suggestion late today that he might turn to the courts to stop this impeachment proceeding. What's he talking about? Can he do that?
Well, David, he can't stop it in the courts. That's a battle he'll have to fight in Congress. But he can slow it down or even sabotage it in the courts, claiming executive privilege to stop his aides from testifying or preventing documents from being released. The White House now gearing up, staffing up for a long legal and political battle ahead. This coming so suddenly after the people here, including the president, thought they'd put the threat of impeachment behind them. David?
Terry Moran at the White House. Terry, thank you. And one more note on this tonight, because there is a mystery now. Who in the White House was alarmed by this? Who spoke to the whistleblower? What did William Barr know, if anything, at the Justice Department? And now tonight, this reaches the State Department, too, because in the whistleblower's report, he writes of multiple U.S. officials who were deeply concerned by what the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was doing. The whistleblower saying Giuliani was circumventing the national security decision-making process to engage with Ukrainian officials to relay messages back and forth between Kiev and President Trump. So I want to bring in ABC's Martha Raddatz because, Martha, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was asked today, did the State Department ever instruct Rudy Giuliani on what to do? And if Secretary Pompeo is certain that there weren't any improprieties within the State Department, here's what he said.
To the best of my knowledge, from what I've seen so far, each of the actions that were undertaken by State Department officials was entirely appropriate.
Martha, Secretary Pompeo, as you know, said he hadn't fully read the whistleblower's report, which is now public. We all have it, but that he knows of nothing done that was wrong at the State Department?
Well, David, that is what Pompeo is saying, but the whistleblower says State Department officials, including 2 ambassadors, had spoken with Giuliani in an attempt to, quote, contain the damage to U.S. national security, and that those officials met with the new Ukrainian administration to, quote, help Ukrainian leaders understand differing messages they were receiving from official U.S. channels on the one hand and from Mr. Giuliani on the other. And David, tonight in a new interview with The Atlantic, Rudy Giuliani is saying it is impossible that the whistleblower is a hero, and I'm not, and I will be the hero when this is over. David?
All right, Martha Raddatz, Martha, Terry, and Mary, we thank you all tonight. In the meantime, the other news this Thursday, the first major snowstorm about to hit. Winter storm watches and warnings up tonight. Up to 3 feet of snow expected in some places. Meteorologist Rob Marciano tracking it all for us. Rob?
Hi, David. While the East deals with rain or record heat, the northern West going to deal with an epic snowstorm for September. We've got winter storm warnings that are posted for much of Montana, Idaho, and Washington. And we have also 3+ feet of snow expected here with 80-mile-per-hour winds. This is going to happen all weekend long. It's going to be blinding and crippling for some of those areas. Ahead of us, another front pushing into that heat ridge in the southeast. Damaging winds potentially tomorrow from Kansas City to Peoria, Illinois. And in the tropics, we've got Hurricane Lorenzo, now a huge Category 4 storm way out there. Karen, a little too close to ignore. It's weak, but she's not dead yet. David?
Rob Marciano tracking it for us again tonight. Thank you, Rob. And this evening, the CDC is now out with alarming new numbers, a major increase in the number of people suffering from vaping-related lung disease. The CDC reporting a 52% increase in just a week. Now 805 cases in 46 states, the death toll now rising to 12. ABC's Steve Osunsami in Atlanta.
35-year-old Andrew Doss of suburban Charlotte, North Carolina, is included in tonight's new alarming numbers. He's one of more than 800 people who've suffered from lung injury that doctors are now linking to the use of e-cigarettes. He says he started vaping in 2018 to help him quit smoking after 15 long years.
It was definitely the most pain I've ever been through, and if the lung collapse didn't cure me of wanting to vape, the chest tube definitely did.
The CDC is now reporting 805 probable cases of vaping-related lung injury across 46 states and the U.S. Virgin Islands. 12 people have died across 10 states. Health officials still aren't sure what's getting people sick. No particular product, company, or chemical is currently to blame. While they figure it out, they say that anyone concerned should stop vaping. But they also don't want these same consumers returning to smoking.
Adults who use e-cigarettes or vaping products because they have quit cigarette smoking should not return to smoking cigarettes.
The vaping industry tonight says that all of the regulation now headed its way does little to stop the sale of illegal products, which the industry says is responsible for all these illnesses. David?
All right, Steve Osunsami in Atlanta, where the CDC is. Steve, thank you. And next tonight, outrage is mounting after a deadly incident at a middle school in Southern California. The 13-year-old targeted died just days later, and there is disturbing video tonight. And now parents face-to-face with school administrators, those parents protesting bullying in our schools. ABC's Matt Gutman in California.
Tonight, parents protesting after that deadly school beating in Southern California. A throng of them swarming the school's superintendent and jeering. He had to be escorted by sheriff's deputies to a school board hearing after a 13-year-old boy identified only as Diego was pronounced clinically dead Tuesday. The parents saying not enough is being done to protect children.
Kids been getting bullied and they're not doing anything.
In that schoolyard standoff last week, Diego is punched once. Staggered, he stumbles back. When that boy in white appears to sucker punch him, Diego falls and would never recover.
I hope he can hear us right now, but tell him I miss him.
At a vigil overnight, his friends mourning him before a sea of community members holding candles. So much pain in that community, David, which is one of the reasons they are holding another vigil tonight for Diego. Now, those two 13-year-olds involved in the beating